This is a massive issue in a lot of organisations where organisations are often run in silos, and there's a department for doing task A and a department for doing task B, and they don't really understand each other's work, and everyone specialises. What tends to happen is everyone wants to innovate and make sure they're performing their work using best practice, but they're not collaborating across an organisation. So bringing different parts of an organisation together brings a more holistic view of problems, and you'll always get better outcomes.
Welcome to Bite Size, a series where we highlight innovation across transport, mobility and smart cities, and meet the people that are making it happen. My name is Emily Bobbis. I'm a road intelligence startup founder, and my goal is to combat the stigma that transport is uncool, uninteresting and uninspired.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much for coming back onto the podcast to chat.
Very excited to be back on here, Emily. Thank you.
So there's been a little bit of a change since we last talked to you. So maybe if you wanted to kind of reintroduce yourself and tell you about your background and things that you're passionate about.
Sure. So since we last spoke, I left Transurban and joined EY. So that was about nearly 2 years ago now. So it has been a while since we spoke on this last podcast, but things I'm passionate about are really the intersection, I guess, between infrastructure and data, and how we can leverage the two to get insights and make things better.
So you have a bit of a focus, or one thing that I've seen pop up quite a lot is this idea of digital twins. But I often think there's a lack of understanding of what that terminology actually means, and that leads to a lot of people having assumptions about what they think a digital twin is. Are you able to kind of explain what a digital twin is, and then maybe an application of a digital twin?
For sure. So, I mean, there's lots of types of digital twins. So you will see a lot of what I term spatial digital twins, which are really 3D digital representations of the physical world. But when I'm talking digital twins, I'm talking about something a little bit different. What I'm talking about is understanding how systems behave. So a digital twin is really simulating a physical system in the digital world, and we can then use that digital twin to optimize how something's behaving. So we can change variables and see what would happen, or we can use the digital twin to predict future state of that system. So a system, and an example, I guess, of a digital twin, it could be a tyre on a truck, and we might use data. So we can use pressure, temperature, things like that, the batch of rubber that the tyre came from. We can look at the speed a vehicle's travelling at, understand how the driver who's driving the vehicle and how they drive. All these factors are inputs in the physical world. What we can do is build a virtual version of that tyre, essentially, using all those parameters and machine learning to then understand how that tyre's behaving. Now, we can't do it and get sensible results from one tyre if we're doing that. But if we look at thousands and thousands of tyres and look at failures of those tyres, so when they're actually going to have an issue, we can then use machine learning to start to build a model of here's how a tyre will behave based on all these different variables and its age and temperature, pressure, the load it's carrying, so how heavy is the vehicle, and all those different pieces come together, and we can actually build predictive models that can be scarily accurate.
It kind of almost sounds like scenario planning. Is that kind of like a good way of looking at it?
Yeah, so it's really having an online version of something that you can test, interrogate, look at different scenarios. So it can be used for optimizing the way things operate. It can be used for making changes and doing a what if, scenario analysis, or, what's going to happen next week or next year as well.
I can imagine, I can think of a whole bunch of personal scenarios where I wish I had a digital twin of myself in a lot of decisions, but
That's the scary one. So then we're moving into artificial intelligence, Emily, and who knows? Maybe one day we will get a digital Emily Bobbis as well.
You kind of talked about the example of tyres. Why are understanding applications of digital twins, say particularly in say transport and smart cities, important?
I think it gives us a whole new tool set beyond what people are using generally today to improve, a whole range of metrics. So it could be safety, it could be sustainability, it could be efficiencies. So there's a whole lot of opportunities where we can move from, like if you look at, say, maintenance, where most maintenance is just time-based. So when you're getting your tyres changed, I'll stick to the tyre example today. You might say, well, the tyres have done, 100,000 kilometres, so it's time to change them or time to get them checked. And then someone will go and check them and say, oh, yeah, that tyre's bald and it needs to be changed. Working with a digital twin, you can predict when that will need to happen. So it's sort of moving two steps beyond. I guess one step beyond is you might have something that's measuring the tread of your tyre, and that's starting to use real data to understand how your safety and future maintenance costs are going to go on that car. But a digital twin will tell you, in 3 months' time, you're going to have to change that tyre. So maybe plan for it now.
Yeah, so like better kind of like future planning, and I feel like a lot of the trends in these things around data and tech is the ability to be proactive and get more information about different scenarios.
Exactly, or maybe we the car tells the driver, hey, your driving patterns are causing undue wear on the tyres and you're going to have to get new tyres sooner, but if you brake a bit more slowly and earlier, you might actually get more life out of those tyres. So giving people the feedback to, better manage their assets.
Changing track a little bit. Last time we spoke, we talked about the idea of a culture of innovation and the role of partnerships between organisations. And I think that kind of tends to be the focus, this idea of how can company A help company B and vice versa. What about, say, like micro level, so partnerships within organisations, either between different teams of people and their skill sets, say, and why might that be important in an organisation, and the success of integrating and applying emerging tech in innovations because of, say, people working together and their different skill sets?
Oh, this is a massive issue in a lot of organisations where organisations are often run in silos, and there's a department for doing task A and a department for doing task B, and they don't really understand each other's work, and everyone specialises. What tends to happen is everyone wants to innovate and make sure they're performing their work using best practice, but they're not collaborating across an organisation. So bringing different parts of an organisation together brings a more holistic view of problems, and you'll always get better outcomes. But additionally, you're starting to bring together different experiences, different viewpoints. So you can do that within an organisation and get much better value by, it might be bringing the IT department together with the operations teams and having them jointly work on problems, rather than the operations team working in silo and the IT team's just seen as a support service for them. So that collaboration in an organisation is absolutely paramount to not just innovating, but actually implementing innovation at scale and actually making things happen, because you get the whole organisation on board. And then, last time we spoke about collaboration between different organisations, and I think that puts the whole thing on steroids, because then you're really bringing different skill sets, different cultures together, and the offerings of multiple organisations are always going to be enhanced with different skill sets and different viewpoints.
It does bring in this greater topic of diversity, and I think often people don't think about diversity in the idea of diverse experiences or diverse skill sets. It's kind of very much co-opted into this idea of like demographics, I think, more so than it's what someone actually can bring to the table regardless of their demographics.
Absolutely. Diversity of thought, to me, is huge. And experience, like you say, having someone with a passion for something, or someone might... I was dealing with someone recently who's involved in their spare time in emergency services, and suddenly, she's explaining use cases to me for things that just open my thinking. And suddenly I can put myself in someone else's shoes and say, oh, hang on, there's a different way to look at this problem. Having that diversity of thought around you and the diversity of experience is hugely valuable. Definitely gender diversity is incredibly valuable. We all look at things different ways. And cultural diversity, of course. So our backgrounds just make such an impact on the way we think. So looking at problems and solving problems with a team and having different viewpoints is just hugely powerful. And sometimes someone might not even think they're contributing, but they've made a comment in a meeting that sparks someone else to have an idea.
There is also kind of another undercurrent there about, say, strengths and weaknesses. I know one of the things that we do is we kind of look at the strengths in the team and then the weaknesses in the team, and then the weaknesses and strengths of particular people that we hire, and then try and match it so that they cover each other. Do you think that kind of plays a role as well?
Oh, yeah. And, my attitude is always work with people who are smarter than me.
Always, yeah.
So, absolutely always, because, they'll bring skills and experience that I just don't have. So particularly, I love surrounding myself with data scientists and data engineers. These people will come up with ways of thinking that just aren't on the table for me. So really powerful, and filling the gaps, making sure, you've got a well-rounded team is really important.
We've kind of touched on it, but often in those macro business level partnerships, people often talk about monetary exchanges. And I think sometimes people forget that you can exchange things that are not money, so like non-monetary value transactions. What kinds of, say, non-financial transactions might provide value for businesses on both sides? Yeah,
I think it's got to, for a team to work well between companies. So if two or more organisations are working together, they've got to both benefit from the relationship. And you're right, it definitely doesn't need to be a financial benefit, but if it might be a joint go-to-market strategy where together they've got a better offering into the market than either of them do alone, and they can both better compete with their individual competitors jointly. Or it might be an exchange of ideas and, or an exchange of culture. Even secondments, so sometimes people moving between organisations for a time can benefit both organisations. So there should be more teaming and collaboration between organisations than there is today, to be honest. Often we sort of stand there with lawyers in between us and say, well, what's in it for us? But very often dialogue, benefits all organisations. And there's a lot of different round table groups. I certainly get involved in a lot of forums, and I always get value from hearing perspectives from people in other organisations or other sectors, and it just expands your thinking.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually about your experiences at EY and how, or even Transurban, you can pick one, about how partnerships, say either internally or externally, have kind of helped you achieve outcomes that you otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So Compass providing connected vehicle data, as the number one fan, gives insights that an organisation like EY just wouldn't be able to provide on its own. Yeah, obviously Compass can provide insights on their own as well, but what I've seen happen is we can collaborate internally in EY and bring a whole lot of understanding to that data set. One example was looking at freight supply chains and bringing in a team of freight specialists in EY, having our data scientists and data and software engineers build a platform, but then leveraging connected vehicle data to actually show what's really happening. And it was quite interesting because the freight specialists had never been exposed to that before. They'd traditionally build a model and it's all theoretical, but combining people with years and years of theoretical experience and understanding of a supply chain with real data creates a whole different level of understanding of that supply chain and how freight's moving.
I mean, and from the flip side, I would say like the non-monetary exchange or the value, say for Compass's side, is that you guys have the brand, but also those connections that maybe we wouldn't have as like a smaller, less established business who doesn't specialize in consultancy.
No, exactly. And what that creates is a win-win outcome where without any monetary exchange, both organisations benefit. So it just makes sense. And everyone says, hey, that's fantastic. And it's of mutual benefit, right? And it also benefits our joint clients. So, I think everyone wins when those sort of outcomes or those sort of scenarios are set up.
And I think it was good that you mentioned earlier the idea of people are like, oh, well, what's in it for me? And often there's layers of legal and things in between that, when I think sometimes all that needs to happen is a reframing. And it's like, well, look, we're trying to solve the same problem for the same people, and we have two sides of the same coin. So if we just kind of like put those two sides back together again, like the outcome is something that would be mutually beneficial for everybody involved.
That's right. And we spend, in society a lot of energy and effort competing quite often instead of collaborating. And maybe that's a bit more of a theme there, that we should collaborate rather than compete at times.
Mm. Oh, and we're also going to be at the ITS Global Summit when is it, in August?
August,
yeah,
yes.
Well, I'll be there. You're going to be on holidays. But EY will be presenting on some interesting stuff.
We'll be talking about connected vehicle use cases, having a panel. It'll be a lot of fun and I will miss it all.
Yeah, we'll send you some photos. I'll put the link in the show notes as well, so that if anyone is listening and is interested in attending the ITS Global Summit and either hearing from us about connected vehicles or other people who are going to be speaking, then they can do so too.
Fantastic.
So, out of everything we've talked about today, what would you say would be the key takeaway, or if people kind of stopped listening, what would be the one thing you want people to take out of the episode?
I think the key one for me would be having those diverse teams, bringing different skills together for better collaborations, and whether those are internal organisation collaborations or multiple organisations getting together, but the benefits that you can get from collaborating are just huge.
And how can people connect with you to learn more? Or did you have an ask for listeners?
Well, people can connect with me in lots of different ways. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm sure, Emily, you can share my LinkedIn profile. So I do answer people on LinkedIn. But, people can definitely think about digital twins, what data they actually could get to make better decisions in their organisations. I don't think there's a part of society that doesn't have data that's not being leveraged well. So I just think there's so many opportunities to do things better.
Well, thank you, Jeff, for coming onto the podcast and chatting with me about digital twins and building cultures of innovation and collaboration rather than competition.
Thanks, Emily. Really enjoyed being back. And am I the first second-time guest?
Yeah, you are the first second-timer that I've had on the podcast.
Oh, very, very honoured. Thank you very much.
If you'd like to learn more about any of the guests that we have on the podcast, more about Bite Size, or more about Compass IoT, the company that produces this podcast, you can visit our website, which is www.compassiot.com.au. Until next time.